Okay, so hello YouTube. Today I'll be fixing the effect hit rate formula from the other video, as well as explaining how aggro or taunt works, okay? Let's start with the aggro. Alright, here's the whiteboard. Class, sit down. It's time to do some math. I know you guys love math. I will call this the Aggro Board. The chance of you getting hit would be your aggro over team total aggro, okay? Color? Okay, fine.
A few moments later.
Are you guys happy? Everyone happy, yes? So, for example, if you have 1 hunt, 1 harmony, 1 abundant, and 1 preservation, it's gonna be 75 over 425, yes? So that would equal to a rounded up number of 18% chance your hunt character getting hit, right? Now we're gonna talk about how the light cone that says increases the chance of you being attacked by enemy do, how much they actually do, as well as, for example, Japard traces, where he has higher chance of being attacked by enemies. I'm gonna give you the exact number. So those are the character's aggro number, right? When they uses their specific ability. So Japard trace is this one. And then the hunt character, right? So hunt character, we have the one on Sealy, when you're below half health. The one on Dan Hung, when you're below half health. The one on Genshin is when he has his soul steal passive, meaning after you use your skill, Genshin has a less likely chance of being attacked by enemy. And the one on Su Shang, when you're below half health. And then we have Lara's ultimate. She has greatly increased chance of being attacked by enemy. And then March skill, she has greatly increased the chance of enemy attacking that ally. So that's what those aggro numbers mean. These are the changes that applies to the aggro number that we have base up here. These are the base aggro number board, and these are the modifier from the character itself, yeah? So Japard Trace gives him a plus 300%. Clara Ode is plus 500%. So Clara Ode is gonna get her 500% of 125. In total, Clara will have a 750 aggro number, and March also gives you a massive aggro number. And Fire main character, if the taunt lands on the enemy, all ally aggro is set to 0. So as long as the taunt lands, there's no chance, no RNG that your ally gets hit. These are the base chance, so I think it rounds up. And now we have to go even more down. Now for the preservation Lycan, we have Lando's Choice that increase the chance of you getting hit. And we also have Moment of Victory that also increases the chance of you getting hit. So the numbers for these ones are quite simple, right? There, that's the study board. Does that answer your questions about aggro? Let me do another example over here. So for example, your team has Japard plus Lando's Choice. And it's still gonna be 1 hunt, abundance, and harmony. It's gonna be like that. Is this easier to understand if I put it like this? Where does the 1 come from Japard aggro? It's adding 300 to the base number. The 1 is the base number. So Japard has the trace for 300 and the Lando's Choice is 200. So it's plus 500%. If you have Japard and Lando's Choice, it drops the chance of your DPS getting hit by around 12%. So that's a rough of how aggro works. But generally, you don't have to run Japard. You really don't have to run Japard with Lando's Choice. Your aggro is already high enough. So these are the aggro chances. Honestly, like your base aggro on your tank is already good enough. Your tank is already getting hit most of the time. I kind of prefer day 1. Like day 1 just feels nicer because it gives you a non-conditional damage resistance for your entire team. The damage resistance is gonna scale really well up to late game because this is a different scaling outside of your defense, and 8 to 12% damage resistance will really add up late game. The only character that would realistically run Lando's Choice or Moment of Victory on is Japard. Because Japard struggles to get energy. He has the 2nd slowest base speed in the game, and he also needs to get hit a lot to generate energy back. When you have 125 energy regen on Japard and have a speed boost, he basically perma-ults. And I think that is when Japard really pops off. But early on, like just starting off the game at level 1, Japard feels like he doesn't generate shield fast enough. If the boss targets something, does changing aggro do anything? Yes. It's a very unique factor of the Fire main character. When the boss targets someone, they do add additional aggro to that character, but I don't know the exact aggro number. However, if you've seen it before, whenever the Fire main character uses their skill, even if the boss is targeting someone, they will hit the Fire main character instead. All right, so that is the aggro number, yes? Now, we're gonna go and fix the effect hit rate. It's going to be quite simple. Debuff base chance multiply by 1 plus effect hit rate multiply by 1 minus effect resist. Oh my god, this is gonna be... Can I make the font smaller? Multiply by 1 minus debuff resist. So the base chance that for you to apply the debuff... Well, let me see. I think sample is easy example. So sample has 65% base chance to apply the debuff. For characters, we only have effect hit rate and effect resist. For bosses and enemies, they have another stat called debuff resistance. For example, Cocolia, these are damage resistance and these are debuff resistance. Different enemy have different resistance towards debuff. Some characters, like for example, Hook has a crowd control debuff resistance, and Clara has crowd control debuff resistance. Stuff like that. So that's how the formula adds up. So for example, if you were to have a 65% base chance to apply your debuff, and then you have maybe 150 effect hit rate, so it's gonna be 0.5, and then the enemy, let's say, have 20% resistance, and maybe like 30 CC resistance. For example, if you build your Japar 50 effect hit rate, and this is the enemy effect resistance and debuff resist, right? This is just a simulation. I'm not sure which enemy has these exact effect resistance and debuff resistance, okay? So a Japar with this much stat would have a 54% chance to freeze enemy, yeah? Obviously, this is just a simulation. I don't know the exact enemy with this stat. So if you have 0 effect hit rate on Japar with your E0 Japar, the chances of you just actually landing a freeze on enemy is like actually lower than expected. Most elite boss enemy have some sort of resistance towards crowd control, yeah? E1 Japar has a 100% chance to freeze enemy. When using your skill, increase the base chance of freezing enemy by 35%, yes? So Japar's skill will now have a 100% base chance to freeze enemy. Would 100% effect resistance means there's no chance to get debuffed then? I assume yes, but I cannot test that number because I don't think anyone can reach 100% effect resistance. My guess is that Hoyoverse will cap effect resistance at like 95% or something. So the effect hit rate correction formula would be debuff base chance times 1 plus effect hit rate times 1 minus effect resistance times 1 minus debuff resist, right? So an E0 Japar with a 65% chance to freeze with 0 effect hit rate and enemy having some effect resistance and some debuff resist will only have a 36% chance to freeze an enemy when using his E. If you have 50% effect hit rate, then the chance go up to 54, yeah? So an E1 Japar essentially is equal to or even higher than a 50% effect hit rate on Japar, and an E1 Japar with extra effect hit rate build will have a higher chance to freeze enemy every time you use their E. Against enemy like Cocolia or like the Ice Golem or the Ice Robots enemy, this chance go even higher because the debuff resistance is probably like 80% or 95%. Because freezing them is like, or trying to freeze them is like near impossible. Currently, with how the formula goes, effect hit rate is just kind of getting smacked on because there's 2 resistance stat and only 1 effect hit rate stat, unless you count the base chance. But you can't change the base chance unless you pay. So that would be the effect hit rate formula and the aggro formula, yeah? Generally, I feel for the aggro formula, Lando's choice is sometime overkill on Japar, but it is useful if you don't have too much stat on him right now to generate energy back quickly. Getting hit more often does give you a higher chance of generating more energy, whereas using day 1 gives your whole team a damage resistance number, so even if you get smacked by AoE damage, it will hurt less. For the aggro part, I prefer having day 1 on most of my tanks because it gives you a damage reduction number that is constant and it's always up. It's 8 to 12%, it also increases the wearer's defense, so it's a little bit more stat. The damage resistance number scales really well into late game when enemies start hurting a lot more when they're much higher level. So the higher level enemy are, the more damage they do. As the base numbers go higher, the damage resistance as a stat scales really well because higher level enemies will do much more damage. And your DPS usually don't build defense anyway, so they won't have the innate damage reduction of defense. This essentially gives them another saving grace. Similar to main character, whenever they use their skill, they also grant your entire team a 15% damage reduction. It's in their traces, it's right over here. A main character with day 1 in my new life light cone gives your team a 23% to 27% damage reduction. That is up whenever they press their E, and an 8 to 12% damage reduction all the time. The job of the tank is just to mitigate AoE damage for your team, usually. The tank will mainly eat the single target damage regardless. The only time I would realistically use Lando's Choice or Moment of Victory is for Lando's Choice. I would use it on Fire MC and Japard if I don't have day 1. For Japard, I kind of prefer Lando's Choice because MC can set the enemy aggro to 0 either way. And Japard 5-star Moment of Victory is useful because it also increases your effect hit rate alongside increasing the chance of you getting hit. Based on the effect hit rate formula, Japard kind of needs both of these stats, so it's perfect for him. You can kind of work this on for March as well, but I prefer March and Fire MC on day 1 better. It just fits cleaner with their skill set. Okay, so that's enough for today's little scuff video, okay? Half the questions I answered is literally answerable just by reading, but no one reads.